evening and welcome to the Thursday, March 15th, 2018 Finance Committee meeting. With us, committee members present, Councilors Boschman, President Kuchmarek, myself, Councilor Di Natale, Councilor Zarella, Councilor Walsh, Councilor Clark's also in attendance, and City Auditor Calvin Brooks. We will start with an order of 4318 that the City of Fitchburg hereby approves the expenditure of funds from the Massachusetts Executive Office of Public Safety and Security Grant in the approximate amount of $55,000 for the purpose of said grant, which is to support the domestic violence advocate position within the police department. Chief Martin, I would ask that you go to the podium over there, please.
Good evening, councilors. This is something different, so bear with me. The grant specifically in front of you this evening, this is a grant that the police department has been successful in obtaining for the last 5 years. This is issued out of the Executive Office of Public Safety. It's a federal grant. This grant funds our domestic violent advocate position within the city. This is an extremely competitive grant throughout the state that we've been very fortunate to receive each year. And it's on a 3-year basis. So this year, where we were granted this award for the next consecutive 2 years, we're going to continue to receive first opportunities at this grant award. To give you a little example of what this position does, our advocate's name is Stephanie Dondero, and we're one of the few police agencies in Worcester County outside of Worcester that employs a full-time domestic violence advocate. What her job entails is each and every day when domestic reports come into the police department, she reviews each and every domestic report and she quantifies the severity of that domestic incident. And the cases that rise to a level of severity, she's reaching out within 24 hours to the victim of the crime and having hands-on service with that victim of a domestic violence. And we're taking that victim to district court, superior court. We're obtaining protective orders. We're basically walking that victim through the system. In addition to doing that on the day after an incident, our domestic violence advocate also twice a week, we respond to home visits of persons that were past victims of domestic violence. We've had great success with that in the past, where an advocate and a police officer will show up unannounced at a victim's home and just ask out of the blue how things are going. And it's a way for us to follow through with domestic violence. It's an extremely important position within the police department. We're fortunate that we've been able to subsidize it for the past 5 years. We're hopefully, with your approval, we can continue this year. And it's just one of those positions that we become very dependent upon. And I've seen the success with the victims of domestic violence. I'd be open to any questions from councilors regarding this grant.
Questions from the
Boschman?
committee, President Kuchmarek.
Chief, first want to congratulate you and your department on receiving this grant once again. And certainly it's helpful to have this grant for 3 years and really be able to project out beyond this current fiscal year and really put a program in place and continue to expand what you've started. I think it's appropriate. We're at Fitchburg State University, and throughout the past they've had a Fitchburg Anti-Violence Education Program known as FAVE. And I'm just curious if you might be able to talk a little bit about any collaborations that might occur between your department and Fitchburg State University.
Sure. 2 years ago, we began introducing Stephanie, the DV advocate, into the university setting. In fact, we started doing calling hours at the intermodal down at the train station, where we share space between Fitchburg State Police and our police department. And she sits down there and she advocates with the university campus. So if there's victims on campus, they have access to our domestic violence advocates. So every Monday, Tuesday, on reoccurring weeks, she's offering her services to the university's student body.
Thanks, Steve. I think that's just crucial because the university can approach it in a proactive way as students come in and throughout their time as students. But I think it's crucial to have that collaboration between law enforcement and the university. We know it's unfortunately these issues are prevalent everywhere, not just in our university but in our communities. And thrilled to hear the work that you're doing and trying to do community outreach on an ongoing basis to make sure we're following up and we're reacting and continuing to change the program as necessary in the community. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilor Boschman.
Chief, did I hear you right say that we're one of few cities?
One of few cities and towns that employ a full-time domestic violence advocate. Each court has a domestic violence advocate that also assists victims. However, we have the opportunity to offer it one-on-one with victims of crimes here in the city of Fitchburg. In addition to her duties, she's also the chair of the High-Risk Task Force, which gets together once a month at the police department, where we review cases with members from the district attorney's office, and we continue to follow them through the court procedures. Because sometimes, after an incident of domestic violence, sometimes the victim can feel alone, and we continue that relationship all the way through prosecution and beyond. So the importance behind this, it lasts much longer than the initial arrest or initial charge. You know, we're staying with a victim until they can get back on their feet. Additionally, you know, we work with people in the community that might not have resources, someone that may need a U visa or something of that nature. So the work she's doing in that office is tremendous, and we're very fortunate to have this opportunity.
Now, my question, has domestic violence gone down in the Fitchburg area, or is it staying the same or gone up?
We're in I'm going to be presenting the council with my end-of-year numbers very shortly. We're in the process of that. In preliminary, it looks like domestic violence had stayed the same from last year. There's other areas that have gone down, but domestic violence is one of those areas that we've seen a steady number in.
Could it be because we lack the necessary skills to make financial headways out in the working world, where everybody's, you know, if you're making $40,000 here and you only get $20,000 here, money causes a lot of problems.
Domestic violence doesn't flow on whether you make 5 cents or $5 million. We have victims all across the spectrum, so I think that would be a fair analogy. You know, we deal with victims from all different socioeconomical points.
Okay, thank you.
Counselor Walsh.
Chief, I just want to commend you and the department for your work in this area. I've worked with Stephanie Dondero I was the former coordinator for the Fitchburg Anti-Violence Education Program at Fitchburg State and worked with her. She was on our advisory board. I've known her for several years, and I just want to say that the intervention at the earliest point in the domestic violence process is critical, and the fact that you continue to have this is commendable.
Thank you.
Counselor Zarella.
I'm just curious, because I saw some of these cases during an internship years ago at a court. Do you find that this program has led to, I mean, I know you're not the attorney's office or anything, but do you find that this has led to an easier time getting victims to successfully and effectively testify in domestic violence cases?
That's a great question from a lawyer. Yes, we see greater success in prosecuting cases when you're walking hand to hand with a victim, someone that's been traumatized by someone that she cares or loves about, or he cares or loves about, because make no mistake, domestic violence goes both ways. When you have that type of advocacy, you have greater success in the prosecution. It may not lead to jail time, but with that type of success, we can offer them greater services. There's a lot of different avenues. So the importance of this program is well after the arrest or well after the act of violence.
Excellent. Thank you very much, and congratulations on the grant.
Thank you.
Motion to adopt
Second.
04318.
Motion made and seconded to adopt 4318. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous. Thank you, Chief. Next, we'll move on to a communication from the mayor concerning the Community Development Block Grant Program Year 44 application and a recommended funding of $940,918. Committee members, I will read the letter from the mayor dated February 28, 2018 to President Michael Kuchmarek. Dear President Kuchmarek, in consideration of the recommendation of the Planning Board and comments by various citizens regarding the Year 44 Community Development Block Grant Program, CDBG, I hereby submit to the City Council the following Year 44 CDBG application for your review. Attached, please find Year 44 estimated funding, Year 44 funding requested, and Year 44 funding recommended. The Year 44 consolidated plan must be submitted to the Department of Housing and Urban Development no later than May 15, 2018, to ensure funds will be available by July 1, 2018. In order to meet the submitted deadline for our Year 44 CDBG program, comments must be received by City Council's March 20th, 2018 meeting. Sincerely, Stephen L. DiNatale, Mayor of Fitchburg. Again, councilors, estimated funding for year 44 is $940,918. And typically what I have done in the past for these is I've gone through each subsection of that recommendation. There are 6 subsections. Public facilities and improvements, 5 projects totaling $137,000. Public services, 6 projects, $132,000. Economic development, 2 projects, $108,250. Rehabilitation and preservation, $120,000. Clearance activities, $264,668. And planning and administration, $179,000. We will start with, and what we have typically done as a committee is, we're going to look through each subsection. Any questions from committee members regarding any project within that subsection are more than free to ask. And I know Liz Murphy is here from the Community Development Office, as is Tom Skorsky. And I know members here advocating for some of these projects are also here to answer questions if the committee has specific questions. If there are no questions from the committee, I would entertain a motion to accept the recommendations of the mayor for each subsection total, and we'll move on to the next subsection. So we'll start with public facilities and improvements, 5 proposals. Sidewalk accessibility improvements from the City of Fitchburg Disability Commission for $5,000. Goodrich Playground Project, Board of Parks Commissioners, $45,000. Crockerfield Grandstand Wall Restoration, City of Fitchburg School Department, $8,000. Streetscape improvements, community development, $74,526. And handicapped accessibility improvements, Fitchburg Historical Society, $4,474 for a total of $137,000. Are there any questions from the committee on these items? Councilor Boschman.
Got one for streetscapes improvement. I notice it says the Gateway and not the Main Street. For the last 4 years, I've been asking about Clegon, and I see the Gateway's main arteries are getting done. I see not the main again done, but I see nothing happening in Ward 2A and 2B. So why is that?
I would ask if you could please go to the podium if you wish to speak on a matter so the public can hear who's viewing. Thank you.
The streetscape improvement line item is intended to be somewhat flexible so that we can respond to grants like MassWork grants and Complete Street grants as they come up. But there hasn't been, to my knowledge, a specific project in Ward 2A and 2B that we've identified to fund, as far as I'm aware.
Well, the reason why I asked this question, for the last 20 years, the kids walking to Memorial Junior High School on Pratt Road do not have a sidewalk. They haven't had a sidewalk since Memorial Junior High opened. Previous councilors before me have put in petitions for a sidewalk, and nothing has taken place, nothing at all. And that would be from Park Hill Pond to Causeway Street, that section.
And I wouldn't dispute the need there, Councilor Boschman. I guess what I would add to that, what Liz had mentioned, a lot of our funds, because if you notice, $74,000 in roadway improvements doesn't get you, it probably paves half a block of what you're looking for here. And what we like to use these streetscape improvements to do is actually leverage other funds like Mass Works, or like in this case, you might note that we originally requested $60,000. We're now, the mayor's recommended more because we received $215,000 of Complete Streets designation, which I know you are part of the public process, Councilor Boschman, and we identified the Upper Common as an area of need. So we tried to pick an area that would reach the widest catchment area of residents and affect the most people, which is why we went with that particular area. It's a challenge for pedestrians getting in and out of the Upper Common area, so we look to make it more pedestrian friendly. But I think what you're requesting would be a bigger number than what we have here with our limited funds.
All right, all right.
Just a point of clarity too as well, and Mr. Brooks can correct me hopefully if I'm wrong. The council has the authority to reduce any of these numbers?
Oh, we do.
Or can we increase them within the funded amount, just reduce like the budget, right?
As a recommendation?
Yeah, as a recommendation to the mayor.
Yeah, I think that's
Okay, so
allowable.
we only have the power, I believe, to reduce these requests, and then the mayor will have to make an adjustment, if we send it back to him with the reductions, for him to reallocate. That is an option you can put on the table. If not, you just pass it as is, but I just wanted to make that clear. Counselor Walsh.
I'd like to address the Goodrich Playground project. Patrick Unity, 151 Bowtell Street, had approached me with regard to, he had proposed putting in a basketball court in that area where the tennis courts used to be, at Goodrich Street Playground. And he said he would be happy with even a half court. So I'm just wondering if there's a possibility in the future of that happening, rather than have an empty field, which would be the result of just taking out the tennis courts and planting grass there. If it's possible to refurbish some of the tennis court.
Absolutely. I would defer to Nate LaRose on this question, who's making his way up, as his department really is seeing that through.
Thank you, everyone, for bearing with us in this location, getting up and coming back, and thank you.
Sorry about that.
Mr.
So
LaRose.
the current condition of the tennis courts is not at a point where we could convert them into any other use. They've deteriorated to the point where it's really just rubble. So the purpose of this project is to clear that out in its entirety and hopefully use it for sports that we would be able to, put in with the funding that we have. So flag football, lacrosse, ultimate frisbee, things that we could hopefully program in that area and work with the school department. But a basketball court's not something we would have the funding to be able to put in at this time.
Yeah, there it is.
Any other questions on public facilities and improvements?
Make a motion to accept the public facilities and improvements recommendations.
I guess I will second that.
Motion and made and seconded to approve the mayor's recommendation of the 5 proposals totaling $137,000 for public facilities and improvements. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous. Next, we will go to public services, 6 proposals totaling $132,000. Street Homeless Intervention Program for Our Father's House, $28,000. Building Empowered Youth and Families, MOC, $10,000. Spartacus Program, Montechusett Regional YMCA, $10,000. Drug Enforcement Patrol Program, Fitchburg Police Department, $60,000. Transportation Services to After-School Programs, Project Learn STEAM, Boys and Girls Club of Fitchburg and Leominster, $16,000. And MIHN Family Housing Family Pathways Project, Montechusett Interfaith Hospitality Network, $8,000. Any questions from committee members on any of the 6 proposals? Councilor Boschman.
I got a question on all 6. And we start off with Our Father's House, please.
Go ahead, sir.
I'd like to see us cut that. I'd like to see us cut it to about $14,000, half of that budget.
Are you making a motion, Counselor, to cut that by $14,000?
Yes, I am.
There has been a motion made to reduce the Our Father's House's Street Homeless Intervention Program from $28,000 to $14,000. Do I have a second on that motion? I do not have a second on that motion. Would you like to continue, Counselor?
I would. The reason why I suggested to cut the Our Father's House is I and Councilor Donnelly and somebody else went around that night that Kevin asked for volunteers, and all we could find that particular night were 3 people. One homeless guy living underneath the bridge has been there for about a year and a half, he said. The other guy that came down to Fitchburg was from out of town. He was from Boston, Mass. 2 other people didn't want to be bothered to going into the shelter at all. They said they'd rather stay on the streets. I feel that we have a saying, well, I have a saying, if we build it, they will come. I believe we have some homeless, but I'd rather see us just focus on the Fitchburg people and not bring them in from other communities. And I think we're bringing them in from other communities to make our numbers look what they are. I know Mr. McLean disagrees with me, but I feel differently. I feel that when I saw Mayor Dan Natale break up a camp and had the guy on the front page of the local newspaper, and he lived from Gardner, Mass., and he said, personally he said, and I'll quote, "I like living this way." And he had tears in his eyes. I really do. And he literally had an apartment up in Gardner. So, you don't think I have a heart. I have a heart. When I saw the guy underneath the bridge, I felt really bad, really bad. And I said, Jesus, who would want to
Counselor,
live like
do you
this?
have a question for Mr. McLean, or are you just?
Well, he
making
can
a
come
statement?
up and explain
I
if he
mean,
wants. I told him I was going to cut it.
Okay, but I will just read what the program request is going to do. It says, project funds will be used to pay staff salary for a 20-hour per week street outreach worker solely dedicated to the homeless within the city of Fitchburg. Connections to health and social services, mental health and addiction services will be offered along with food, clothing, blankets, and human contact. We'll work with Fitchburg PD and Fire Department. In addition, $8,000 would be available to pay for a chronically homeless person's first month's rent only or one-time payment in order to enable individuals to acquire and live in permanent housing and off the streets. Mr. McLean, would you like to address Councilor Boschman's comments?
He, just want to let you know that he did volunteer with us on, we do one annual count of the homeless. It's always the last Wednesday of January. It's a HUD count. I looked for volunteers, and the councilor joined us. It was a very cold night. We didn't find a lot of people outside that night. I'd like to say that's not a representation of the homeless people on the streets of Fitchburg. Now, the funding we are asking for is to continue with the street outreach. It's not to fund the shelter, it's to address the people that are living on the street. So we can't control who's homeless in Fitchburg. We can't control who comes to Fitchburg besides the homeless. There's no control over that. The street outreach engages the people that are on the street. Tries to get them off the street, try to get them into housing, try to get them back to Gardner, that's what they belong. That's what that funding is.
The chief wants to say a word.
I'd like to just input my opinion on this program. Since the, I'm sorry. Sorry.
And could you speak up, chief?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
The police department works very closely with Kevin on this initiative, and this past year has seen some great success on our outreach in the community. I truly believe our reduction in homelessness has been impacted greatly by the efforts we did last year. Keep in mind, homelessness is just not someone living under the bridge. This could be someone that's bouncing from couch to couch. And there's more behind this outreach of just straight homelessness. We're dealing with mental health issues. We're dealing with a variety of issues, drug abuse, drug addiction. And this type of outreach, having someone like Kevin that we can call, my community engagement officers work with Kevin and his group on a weekly basis. And I would suggest that the numbers that you may have seen on that given night, since they were reduced, are because of this program. We have significantly reduced. We're not only dealing with outreach on homelessness, but we're dealing with other life issues, such as the panhandling that we see in the city, and all the mental health issues that are popping up in our streets. We're tackling head-on with the help of Kevin McLean. So I would strongly ask you to consider your position on this. We've just seen great success, and I'm hoping we can continue this relationship with our Father's house.
Now,
Thank you.
can I say something else, Marcus?
You may.
Kevin and I talked earlier because I called him up and I told him what I was going to do. So there's no surprise I didn't blindside him. On the $8,000 additional, where he wants to give the first month's rent. I own property, and I talk to a lot of different other people that own property, and I know programs where they give the first month's rent and the last month's rent. But yet, the same people, they get the first month's rent and helping out, and the last month's rent helping out, still get evicted because they don't pay the rent. And I just don't want to see our money wasted where I get programs here where they cut and I'm going to give it away. And I want programs like the neighborhood center in my ward that's only got $10,000. I mean, I got a vast more stake here than a couple of people and worrying about them. And that's why, and I told him that. And I didn't pull no bonus about it here.
Can I answer that?
Go ahead.
Do you remember when you asked me that question today and the answer that I gave you today?
Yeah.
Now, Our Father's House houses a lot of people. I can't say everybody that we've housed is not homeless again, but our numbers are 77% over the last 3 years of 325 people that we've housed are still housed. So 7 out of 10, not bad numbers. Have I ever housed anybody in any of your apartments? Probably not. What we do, big stumbling block for people is coming up with first month's rent, last month's rent. We have other funding sources for that. Most of those funding sources are for all of the Montechusett area, not for Fitchburg exclusively. So the reason we ask for that extra money is so we could match funds with people. If someone can come up with first month's rent, we do last month's rent. Someone needs a security deposit. If they accept funding from us, they accept Our Father's House as well. Our Father's House holds people accountable. People have to qualify. They have to go through a budgeting program that is done through MOC. They have to show that they can stay housed. We're not just going to do a Band-Aid because that doesn't solve the problem. We work long-term, and our numbers prove it.
Now, do you get FEMA money too
We do get FEMA money, and FEMA
for
comes
housing?
with... No,
You don't get no FEMA money
not
for housing?
FEMA for housing, nope.
All right.
I will let any of the other committee members speak on the Our Father's House request only for right now, since Council Boschman started the conversation on that. Does any committee member want to speak on this specific project? President Kuchmarek.
I was going to touch on that same point of, if we truly only had 3 members who are homeless, that would be a great problem to have, and that would demonstrate the success of the program. And I would suggest that you don't penalize the success of a program by decreasing funds. You either continue to fund or you increase your funds because of effectiveness. It's a way of rewarding a successful program. At the end of the day, do I believe that we only have 3 homeless people in the city? Absolutely not. And if we did at any one time, homelessness isn't a one-time occurrence. This isn't a, great, we just solved homelessness, on to the next problem. This is something we have to continue to work at. And, I think we also hit on that, they provide crucial referral services to other agencies. So even if someone is only homeless for a period of time, there's a number of other services or issues that this individual may have where they can receive those crucial referrals to services and guidance. So I look at this as both reactive to a situation that we have in front of us, as well as preventative for other issues that may come down the pike and affect a variety of other agencies and departments throughout our city, from public safety to housing, et cetera. So, I would suggest that we reward the success of the program at 77% success rate of getting folks in proper housing, and look to continue funding for this program. And I'd suggest that homelessness can occur, in any community, and having a resource such as Our Father's House is, I look at this as a value added to our community, not a detriment to it. So thank you for your efforts.
Any other questions from committee members on the Our Father's House project only? Seeing none, any questions on the remainder of the projects?
On the projects?
On the rest of them?
Yes, I told you all 6.
Okay, Councilor Boschman?
I'd like to talk about the United Neighborhoods of Fitchburg. From 44.9, 45,000 down to 10,000 this year. I want to share something with you. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, American Community Survey 2010-2014 5 years estimate, Pittsburgh has the highest percentage of residents living or below 100% or 200% of the poverty than Massachusetts. Pittsburgh, with 19.8 of all the people in poverty, is 1.8 times 28.10% versus 15.1 in Pittsburgh. We cut a program in my ward where I have a vast majority of poor people. And the people that use the Clegon United Neighborhoods Center are the ones that need the program. We went from 45,000 down to $10,000. Now we come and we say, this is justifiable that we raise them to 28,000. But here we get something that we can improve people's lives, and we cut it. We literally cut it. So, we're saying we're going to help the ones here, but we're not going to help the ones that really need it, the ones that make a difference. And they make a difference. Believe me, it does make a difference. And I get really upset when I read something like this, because you got a program that for 44 years, as Tom Donnelly says, we had a program, and nothing has really changed. Nothing's changing. Why don't we try something different? We haven't tried anything different. We cut the programs for the kids on education where you can help them, and they see a better light. They see poverty and somebody shooting up on the side of the road or swearing in at it in a household. Safe haven. I wish, what's her name, would come up and talk. She's the head of locked person up there. You know her? Is she minds?
Ms. Shaw, but one second, I just want to make a comment, Counselor, on what you stated. It is my understanding from talking to the administrator of CDBG and the mayor that there are reprogrammed funds from prior fiscal years that are being carried over into this one, which is why the request is so much reduced. Non-used funding allocated in prior fiscal allotments were not used. They're being carried over into this year. And I believe the number is somewhere around 30,000, give or take. So that would actually make it around 40-some-odd thousand that they'll be getting this year.
Right.
30,000 from reprogrammed funds, and then 10,000 on top of that. If they weren't getting reprogrammed funds, I would assume, I don't know this for a fact, that the mayor and the planning board would have given them close or the same as what they got the prior fiscal year.
And I understand what you're saying, but I can go back and I can understand the handicap thing. We give them $5,000 a year, and they had a budget of $25,000. Budget of $25,000. So one year we didn't give them any. Last year we didn't give them. I don't think we gave them the year before $5,000. So they had. So what's wrong with carrying over? They went to a turmoil, and we didn't want to give them the money because we wanted to have a full investigation. But they kept the program open. They literally kept the program open for the kids. So somebody had to pay for it. Somebody had to pay for it. It wasn't St. Joseph Church. It wasn't a Baptist church. Somebody paid for it.
So there's nothing wrong with using reprogrammed funds. If they have funds that are unused, like any other area in this package, they carry over. There's no need to add on top of that another 40,000 if they didn't use the funds we already gave them. So it's not a cut in that sense. Now, is there less funding for this organization since I've been on the council 10 years ago? Yes, there is. There is also projects on this page that have gotten increased funding. There are projects that have gotten decreased funding. There are projects that are new on the page. There are projects that are not new on the page. And I might point out as well that every single year that I've been a counselor, the Federal Housing and Urban Development Department has reduced the number allotted to Fitchburg every single year. So most projects get a cut, some do not. But I just want the public to be aware that while it says 10,000, that's out of this year's program funds because this organization has reprogrammed funds from prior years that were not used that are now going to be used on top of this 10,000. So while it may look like it's being cut by 35, 40,000, it is not. And do you have any specific questions for a member of the audience on this subject, or are you finished, Counselor, with your statement?
Well, I want to say one thing. I want to get it clear. It's not prior years in a plural sense. It's last year. And last year, they did not get the funding from the CBG funds because they were under investigation. So all funds stopped because they didn't know where they were going. They had no clue where they were going.
Counselor, it is irrelevant the reason. The fact is the money was not used, so it's being used this year. It's irrelevant why it wasn't used. It wasn't used for whatever reason. It's being used this fiscal year on top of the $10,000. That's all I'm going to say on that. Council President Kuchmarek, you had your hand up?
I know my colleague to my left is looking to speak to each one of these, and I'll spare him and others rebutting each individual one that he may have concerns about. Overall, I look at these, I mean, under our list of public services homelessness, after-school education, youth development, and drug enforcement. All of these programs are worthy. All of these are tackling prevalent issues that are pervasive in our community. I wish we had, $500,000 more to throw at each of these organizations and the causes and issues that they represent. The reality is we don't. As Chairman DiNatale just stated, the federal government, through HUD, gives us fewer and fewer funds each year. This has been cut year after year, probably since its inception, and probably will continue to be cut for the next decade. I mean, there's nothing we can do about that except for contact, our federal delegation. So contact your congresswoman, contact your, the two senators' offices. But we can expect that year after year, these allotments will continue to go down, and we'll have no choice throughout the next decade and beyond to cut each one of the fundings for these programs. But at the end of the day, we're lucky and fortunate to have them, to get these funds from the federal government, to be able to award to these agencies. I don't know how we can choose one over another. It's each of these agencies needs funding, and we're fortunate in this case where there are rollover funds from last year that can be carried over and reallocated to the United Neighbors of Fitchburg. Of course, I think there's merit for each one of these organizations for funding, and again, unfortunately, the pool isn't large enough for us to give out more funding. But at the end of the day, the mayor put recommendations in front of us to provide some form of funding and some semblance of balance between each of these organizations. And at the end of the day, I think I'll be voting in favor of each of them.
I just want to, I will allow Ms. Shaw to speak if she'd like, to address what was stated if you wish. You're more than welcome to come to the podium. If not, it's no big deal. I just want to leave that option available to you if you want to. I will say that my concern is the next year when I see this, because if in fact the reprogrammed funds for any of these is of a substantial nature like that, what that tells me is if there weren't reprogrammed funds, it's likely this line item would have got 40,000, 45,000, and then I would say to myself, well, where would the $30,000 come from out of this list? And it looks like we would have to either get rid of the homeless program, Spartacus would take a hit, the drug enforcement, everything on this page would get a significant cut if that stayed constant. So while we're fortunate this year that we can fund these other programs while maintaining some semblance of a level-loaded number for the United Neighbors, my concern looking at this is next fiscal year. Because if they use all the funds this year, what are we going to do next year, either for their organization or for the rest of the organizations on this page? Because I can guarantee you that the feds aren't going to give us more than 940 next year. So that's something I have a concern about next year. But Ms. Shaw, would you like to speak?
I'd like to make
Yeah.
one quick statement.
Yep.
I hate to have to come all the way down to say this. I just want to say thank you for the opportunity, and thank you, Counselor, for strong advocating for the center. With that being said, I think the majority know pretty much the service delivery that's going on there. But yes, the 10,000 is going to be a challenge, a huge challenge. Mock's already put tens of thousands of dollars into the programming there. But with that being said, yes, it's a challenge. The rollover is definitely going to not meet the total allocation from last year, but we do get some United Way funds, the CDBG funds, and our MOC funds, and we'll continue to work hard on seeking other funding. So I want to say thank you, and we do appreciate the funding, and the services will continue.
Thank you. Sure.
Just wanted to take a quick minute to comment on that, and Councilor Boschman, and specific yours. This is a thankless job every year, having to allocate funds to an ever dwindling pot. If you look at the early 80s, I think the allocation for the city was about $2 million. That's not counting inflation. So we've decreased in half in over 30 years. And again, that does keep dwindling, and we have to make difficult decisions. And what we did here with UNF and MOC is certainly not in any way, shape, or form an indictment on the work that they've done to right the ship, which has been tremendous. I think if MOC didn't step in and do what they've been doing, we wouldn't be here right now giving them anything. because I don't think they would be around. And I think it's commendable what they've done to step up and be a partner in the community and, again, right the ship and get them on good footing for next year and in years to come to be sustainable above and beyond CDBG funding. And every year we need to make creative decisions with how we're going to allocate these funds. And you mentioned the disability funding in particular, and just as an example, we used our roadway funds this year to leverage $215,000 of Complete Streets funding that's going to go towards making sidewalks accessible, which is the same goal that they're asking for year in and year out. And we did fund them for $5,000 last year. But when we make these decisions, we don't make them without careful thought, careful deliberation, and creative thinking about how we can interlock these different programs to make them work the best they can on limited funds.
Thank you both. Any other questions on the United Neighbors line item, I guess? Seeing none, any questions on the remainder of these items? Councilor Boschman.
I just want one thing. I'm not fighting against it, sir. I'm sticking up for you, so don't worry about it. I want to read something here to the point again. Financial hardship continues to be a prevailing issue with 19.1 of the individual living in poverty compared to the state average of 10.4. According to Community Health Assessment of North Central Massachusetts, Pittsburgh economy status is one of the most serious in the state. Now, I keep on emphasizing that we're going about it the wrong way in some of the programs that we're instituting. That the reason why he came in front of us, the chief, came in front of us a couple months ago for the Sharing Fund, project grant was to help the kids that needed help, the troubled kids. A lot of these programs that we're instituting here are for that purpose.
Counselor, do you have a specific question? On
No,
the
I
Spartacus
just wanted to
program?
tell him that. I read his thing, and I wanted to point out again that we got 19% of the people in that ward, your ward, Counselor, that need help. My ward, the same thing, 19%, okay? Thank you.
Counselor, I will just say, in totality in this package, I don't envy the position any of these people are in with these organizations, because every year it's a constant struggle to have adequate funding to provide needed services to the members of our community, in some cases the most vulnerable. And it does not give me any pleasure that every year I see some of these areas go down, 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 down in funding. We're at the behest of the feds with what they allow us to use, and we have to take into account all of these requests. So I give a tremendous amount of credit to everybody in this room and who's not here but is involved in all these projects for the hard work that they do that sometimes goes unnoticed. It's not unnoticed with me or anybody on this committee, I'm sure, and you can make a strong argument why every one of these programs needs exactly what they requested, but like we see every year, time and time again, that's not going to be the case, unfortunately. So there is no disagreement that there are needs, there is no disagreement that there are significant challenges, and that these organizations, I should say, are under constant strain and pressure by way of funding. We try to do the best we can as a city to allocate accordingly while not jeopardizing the core use of these programs. So that goes without saying for any of these items on the list. Are there any questions for the remainder of this public service package?
I would make a motion to accept the public services funding recommendations.
Motion has been made and seconded to adopt the 6 proposals at $132,000 as requested. Any questions?
On the motion.
Yes, Council Boschman.
I just want to point out one other thing, because we were talking about numbers and our Father's House game numbers. 75% of the people involved in that Sparta class attend school now. 60% have no court involvement any longer. 80% will reduce court involvement. So these programs work for the youth, according to Sparta's records that they sent to the hub thing. That these programs are actually working. That's all I want to show. So these people realize that when they're making the decisions now, they get some baseline to go by and say, hey, the programs are working. So why don't we invest more money into these programs? Yeah, we're going to have to cut some of them. Well, these programs are working. That's all I want to say. Thank you. Thank you.
Council Zarella.
I'd just like to point out, with respect to the Spartacus program that Councilor Boschman just raised, it appears, if I'm reading this correctly, that we are fully funding their request this year, Councilor.
I understand. I said I
And-
wasn't fighting his thing. I just wanted to point out something.
Mhm.
I wanted to highlight what I read by the young man over there. And I want to say thank you. Good notes. Well, you didn't give me good notes.
Okay, I have a motion made and seconded to approve the public services requests. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
One in opposition, Council Boschman. We'll move on to economic development. Two proposals totaling $108,250. Thank you for any members in the audience that attended this evening. We appreciate the work that you do and continue to do for this city. Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming.
We have two proposals for economic development. Small Business Technical Assistance Program, New View Communities, $21,000. And CDBG Business Loans and Grants, Fitchburg Community Development Department, $87,250.
One question
Yes,
Council
Councilor
Boschman.
Boschman.
on CBG loans, 100,000, 87,250. Business loans and grants. Could you tell me the 3 to 5 businesses that we're going to be helping?
I don't have a time machine. This is year 44, so that will begin July 1st. Are you talking about year 43?
We're talking about you applying for 80. You applied for 87,250.
Requests for funding hasn't come in.
Oh, it hasn't come in
It
yet.
starts on July 1st.
Oh, it starts on July 1st. I'm sorry about
Correct.
that.
Those 3 to 5 businesses have to apply. You're
Correct.
saying that that's the number that you could probably service, the number of applications you can afford to allow.
Correct.
So there's no businesses yet. The funding is to cover 3 to 5 businesses, depending on size and scope, that wish to apply when the program opens up on July 1st. They don't have businesses on the docket right now that they're going to service.
So what happens if, I'm just asking a question, what happens when a business comes in and, we say 50 or 60% of the council doesn't approve of that business, do you still give them funds because they don't have to come in front of the council?
I'm not sure I can answer that question because I don't poll council members when I get applicants or prospective businesses coming into the office, so it's really difficult to gauge.
Counselor, we don't have any say in the
I
businesses
understand.
that get
Okay.
allocated this money. All we have a say in is allowing them to have a pool of money to service 3 to 5 businesses that apply for this program.
Okay, I just thought I asked the question, Council. I want to say thank you. I thought it was a good question to ask because I wanted to know. I didn't know
I'm
the
answering
answer.
your question, Counselor. We don't have a say in it. I mean, what we do have a say in is how many can be serviced. We don't have a say in what specifically can be serviced.
I mean, I will say that, and I mentioned this to you at the planning board hearing for this, this is really our tool, the only tool that we have as a community development department to not just work with existing businesses that are at our door. It's a tool to encourage new investment, to incent new investment in areas in particular sectors that we'd like to see. This isn't, we don't have people banging on our doors for these loans and these grants. We're seeking out the businesses that we'd like to see and using this as a tool, as an incentive.
Okay.
So,
Any other questions on economic development?
Motion to approve the economic development recommendations.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve the recommendations for economic development. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous. Next, we'll go to rehabilitation and preservation. Two proposals totaling $120,000. Code enforcement, Fitchburg Board of Health, $100,000. Idea Lab build-out, Fitchburg State University, $20,000. Any questions on rehab and preservation? Counselor Boschman.
Can I ask the Board of Health man
Mr.
a
Curry?
question, Mr. Kerry?
Good evening, councils.
With this cut, is this cut that you're taking from 153,000 down to 100,000, is that going to affect your employment?
It could, Counselor. I believe the goal, and I applaud the finance team and the mayor, I believe the goal for several years now is to sort of wean inspectors off the CDBG program and have them funded via the city budget. And I believe that is still the goal. So if that 152,000 would fund 2.5 positions. So obviously, if the budget was cut 50,000, we would lose one inspector.
It's a good, okay. All right, that's all I want to know. All right.
President Kushmer?
In my discussions with, the mayor in the past, the council every year for as long as I've been a counselor is consistently hammered during these discussions, regardless of who the mayor is, the funding of payroll through CDBG. And I have to applaud this mayor. Last year made a 30% reduction to help start weaning down. Now, certainly, I don't want to see any reduction. In fact, I'd like to see an increase in staffing levels for the Board of Health. But that said, I believe this is strictly a move to wean the funding off of CDBG and put it under the city budget where our payroll truly belongs. So if that is indeed the intent of the mayor, then I applaud him for proper budgeting practices.
Any other questions?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve rehabilitation and preservation. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous. Next, we'll go to demolition for clearance activities. One proposal, $264,668 from the Fitchburg Community Development Department for demolition.
Motion.
Sorry, go ahead.
Motion to approve clearance activities.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve clearance activities as proposed. This will take care of an estimated 7 buildings containing up to 21 units for demolishing. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous. And lastly, Planning and Administration, CDBG Administration, Fitchburg Com Development Department, $179,000, one proposal.
You had a question on that? On this
Council
thing?
Boschman.
Do I have to talk to Ms. Murphy? Who do I talk to on that if I want to make it, if we cut that?
Ms. Murphy can speak. Just for the public's edification, this is a level funded number. Last year, they received the same amount. Ms. Murphy, do you have a question, Council?
Yeah. If somebody was to cut that by 40,000, would it affect anybody employment in their office?
Well, I'd have to take a closer look at it. It is likely that we would start with not being able to pay for the staff fringe benefits. It's basically a reimbursement that goes to the city, so that would be the first place we look.
Kevin, excuse me.
So that would end up affecting the city and the general budget, because there is a payment that goes to the city at the end of each year that's paying what it can pay for the CDBG funded staff benefits.
I think Mr. Brooks might be able to expand on that if he could. Is that correct?
Yeah, there would, if the block grant funding is reduced, then there's going to be a hit to the general fund budget that the mayor would be proposing in May, because we'd have to make up, we'd either have to cut staff or make up that in additional revenue or cuts in other areas of the budget.
So basically, my hands are tied.
You can do what you want, Counselor.
All right, forget it.
Motion to approve the planning and administration recommendations.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve Planning and Administration. Speaking on the motion, Council Zarell?
I just wanted to confirm, what I'm seeing here is we're laying out $179,000 and getting roughly $8.5 million in federal grants out of this. Is that what I'm reading here?
CDBG does leverage quite a bit of other funding, yes.
Okay. Sounds like a good deal to me.
Could you reach in? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous.
Who seconded that last?
Who seconded that last one?
Councilor Zarella.
Council Zarella? Council Zarella, yeah.
Yeah, he didn't want me to talk.
Just an announcement, Mr. Chair. I'd like
Yes.
to just thank Fitchburg State University for their hospitality and hosting
Yes.
us this evening. With our cancellation of, because of the Tuesday storm, I know that that caused a little bit of havoc in terms of scheduling meetings throughout the city, and Fitchburg State, I know, jumped at the opportunity to host this meeting, so I'd like to thank them. With that, I'd like to make a motion that we adjourn.
Second?
Second.
Motion made, seconded to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you, Council.